Weight, which delivered its numbers yesterday, was Maruti Suzuki. Let's touch base with the chairman, Mr. RC Bhargava, joining us right now to talk about the numbers and, of course, the demand scenario, given that festival season is just around the corner. Mr. Bhargava, thank you so much for chatting with us. Talk to us about the demand scenario. What are the lead indicators pointing to right now? Is the recovery more of a result of the pent-up demand, or do you see it sustaining going ahead as well?
You know, the general assessment is that the growth in demand reflects partly the pent-up demand, because there has been a pent-up demand even from 1920. Last year, as you know, instead of growing, the auto sector went down by 18%. And in addition to that, there was a pent-up demand for the current year. So certainly the pent-up demand would have been a factor in the sales taking place at a higher level this quarter. In addition to which, there was the factor of people wanting personal transport and avoiding shared transport, whether it was metro or buses or anything like that. And I think both factors combined. The rural sector has been very good because the crops have been outstanding, monsoon has been very good, and I think the general optimism prevails in the rural sector that things are going to be okay till the next year at least. So those are all positive factors that contributed to the growth of the sales this period now. When you ask for sustained growth, it's very, very difficult to predict what sustained growth will be, because while some of these factors will play out, like the pent-up demand and personal transport requirements and things, the rural demand will still remain strong going forward for some time. But the worry is about the urban demand. Some sectors of the economy are unlikely to grow in the near future to anything like their past rates of performance. Like you take the entire hospitality industry, the entertainment industry, the travel and tourism industry. I think all of them have been very hard hit. And they were fairly large consumers of automobile products. So that's going to remain a negative. The fall in the GDP which we witnessed this year and which will take some time to get back to normal has meant lower per capita incomes, so that reduces the purchasing power. So there is worry on the urban front as to how long the factor of pent-up demand and personal transport will continue. But that is why we are keeping our views open on what will happen going forward after December.
Okay. Mr. Bhargava, does that mean Maruti and OEMs at large will now be chasing the rural demand and would like to tap in more into regions where the penetration is relatively low in perhaps rural, semi-urban, tier 3 type cities?
Maruti has certainly been concentrating on the rural markets, not just this year, but for the last many, many years. And it is a result of that concentration of effort, opening outlets for sale, opening outlets for service, employing local people for sales of cars in those areas, which have resulted in the contribution of the rural market to total sales of about 40%. It's not a small number. And we have achieved this because we foresaw that the rural market was going to become a growing market in the years to come. And we had started this effort some 7-8 years ago. And this is continuing because we continue to open our sales and service network and spare part network in the rural area. I think other companies have also seen the strength of the rural demand, and they will also be spreading out in the rural areas.
Right. So, while talking about contribution to sales, we've seen that the share of hatchbacks has gone up to now 62%. Last time when we spoke to you, you were not very sure if the preference towards small cars will become a permanent trend or a long-term trend. can we expect share of smaller cars and hatchbacks to expand beyond these levels as well, at least over the medium term?
I don't think that we should expect too much of an increase over the current level. Maybe there'll be a small increase. But as you see, this is a very high number. There is also a big market growth in the SUV segment. So that will continue. There's people who are buying the bigger sedans and things. That market is not going to go away. So unless there is a substantial increase in the total demand of cars, and the people at the lower end of the market are enabled somehow to buy cars because they become more affordable to them, then I think the percentage may go up. But with the existing conditions as they are, I don't see that there can be too much of a change in that percentage.
Average realization, given that the share of cars priced sub 10 lakh category is about 60% compared to the market level of 50%, do you think average realizations could be under pressure for some time, or there are no concerns there?
But this is not an area of pressure for us at all, because average realization is an outcome of the product mix. And product mix reflects what the customers want. And a manufacturer has to meet what the customer wants. I cannot artificially increase my realization per vehicle by trying to sell vehicles that the customer doesn't want. So I don't think we place too much importance on this average realization and think that this is a pressure point and we must do something about it. No. We follow the market. We follow the consumer.
Right. Hi, Mr. Bhargava. This is also Varun joining into the conversation. You've spoken a lot about the economy taking its own time to get back up and running to the pre-COVID levels. So how would something like a GST rate cut feature right now, wouldn't that actually help propel demand, or do you feel that we're already well secured on that front?
There has to be a supply situation also there. Merely creating demand till there is supply also doesn't make sense, because it will mean a loss of revenue to government. Clear loss of revenue, which is not required at the moment. That is why I've been saying that I'm talking about GST cut, but the GST cut is required in a longer term scenario or a medium term scenario to increase the percentage of growth which we are able to achieve long term. At the moment, I'm talking of now this quarter 3 of the financial year. Till December, I think supply and demand are well in match, and there's no point in increasing the demand at this point of time. But if in the next financial year, I don't know when that may or may not happen, if the demand falls and there is an increasing gap between supply and demand, I think that is the time when government needs to look at all the factors which are influencing demand, including GST, but that's not the only factor.
Right, so. Well, thank you so much for taking out the time to chat with us this morning on BNSN. Karanya, if you don't have any follow-up questions, let me know.
Mr. Bhargav, thank you so much for chatting with us and joining us this morning. If you could leave us with a comment on how, the retails are playing out, just post Navratri and in the run-up to Diwali, what is your projection for sales?
Oh, this Navratri sales have been higher than what they have been in Navratri for the last several years. And that indicates that the Diwali sales should be equally good and better than what we've had in the past. The inquiries are certainly higher. The bookings are pretty steady. And I think all indications are that Diwali sales will be better than what they had been last year and year before.